She Alice?
Here we
Oh,
go. Yeah,
okay.
all good.
Good. Yeah,
A huge welcome, Rossana. This is another edition of Mark's Shorts where we're going to talk to amazing leaders who have pivoted from executive career into the board space to get their lessons, their shared experience, and a little bit of insight into what kind of roles and opportunities are exciting for them as they continue to lean in and add value and impact in the boardroom. So, Rossana, huge pleasure to meet. Could you give a quick introduction to everybody? But we're so pleased to have you here. Such an amazing career, and really excited to go a little bit deeper today.
well, Mark, the career is just starting, as you
Yeah.
may know. Thank you for the invitation. It was a great pleasure to be here with all of you. So, regarding my career, I defined my career in three cycles. So, I started as a strategist, and I worked as a strategist for 13 years at McKinsey, Monsanto, Abril, which is a publishing company, then Avon in Brazil and in Colombia, in charge of Brazil, and then head of the cluster, the Andean cluster, and finally as digital strategy for LATAM. So that cycle took 13 years. Then in my second cycle, I was a CEO, and I led the operations of Avon in Ecuador and Chile, and Amway throughout Latin America, 12 countries in Latin America. And for the past 4 years, I've been in my third cycle, which has been as a board member. And as a board member, I decided to have a very broad and diverse portfolio in public, in open, public, and closed capital firms, as well as international boards, multinational, and family owned companies as well. And I've been in several sectors. I mean, technology, infrastructure, retail, consumer goods, private equity. So I enjoy learning and contributing and getting to live new experiences, being it geographic, company, or challenge wise, right?
Yep. No, we've spoken through your portfolio, and we'll go a little bit deeper into that at the moment. It's incredibly impressive, and like you said, very diverse by industry segment and by type of business. I'd love to kind of explore a little bit, Rosanna, maybe the first two questions a little bit on kind of looking back, kind of 4 years ago. How did you build up the portfolios? Maybe a little bit of insight on your networking and how you kind of created this portfolio. And then the second question linked to that, your mindset on no longer being a CEO and being impactful in the boardroom. So those two questions would be fantastic.
Well, I think that's what I say. It's a cycle because I think it's kind of layers. You start with the first layer, which is a strategy, and then the second CEO, and the third board member. And I think you never quit being the previous one, right? You accumulate functions. So my transition from CEO to board member actually was not intentionally thought.
Yep.
I left Amway, and I took a 2-3 month sabbatic, and I was thinking on getting back as a CEO. But I had my plan A and my plan A plus, which was getting one or two board positions. I
Yep.
had already done certification, a board certification. I had been I was already in the board network, but I had never had a paid board position.
Yep.
I had only unpaid for ONGs or class entities, right? Industry entities. So the plan A plus was CEO plus board,
Yep.
one or two positions. However, that was exactly during
So
the
it's
pandemic.
A plus plus is what
A
happened
plus,
then.
yeah. And then the pandemic came, all the executive positions were put on
Yep.
hold, and the board positions start coming. And the more I got caught by these positions, the more I got passionate about it, because the potential for learning, for contributing, get magnified in boards. While as a CEO, you have to get to deal with the day by day and urgent stuff. In the board, you can really focus on the most important and strategic issues, right? And plus, it also gives you more flexibility and opportunity to develop yourself. I
Yep.
say that this 4 years as board member is a dog year. It's worth 7 years,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I've learned more in 4 years than in 12 as a CEO indeed.
That's amazing. And maybe share a little bit, Rossana, the the sources of of the conversations, how it happened, how the different roles came. And we always talk about, the challenge is to get the first paid for board role, then the second one's a little bit easier, then the third one, and then suddenly you're kind of in those circles, in those conversations, and you're more visible. But maybe if you could share a little bit, because I'm sure a lot of the viewers would find that spectacularly interesting.
Oh, that's great. This week I just launched a book that's Women in Board. We are 25 women, and we launched our story in a library here in Brazil. And actually, in this chapter that I wrote, I give an advice of 4-step path towards a board. So I will share that with you. uh, the first step is about building your content, right?
Yep.
Building your experience, your knowledge, your competencies. Throughout our career, we have been building that. And we are strong in certain aspects, and we are not that strong in others. So, the concept of lifelong learner
Yep.
it's a concept that you have to be constantly on as a board member, because you cannot never be in a comfort zone. The world's moving too fast, and you have to keep up ahead of this movement, right? So I try to focus on the areas that I'm strong in order
Yep.
to reinforce it, but especially in the areas that I'm not that strong, so I can reinforce it. I will never be a specialist in technology, for instance, but I have to know how to use technology, or how to think technology in a business environment, right? So I think this is the first advice. I mean, focus on your competences and what you have to build as a lifelong learner person, right? The second is about how you build your storyline. And I think you had a very good video on this for the board bio.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also learned how to build my story. Not as usually we tend to build our story based on a chronologic,
Hmm.
phase by phase. Okay, I studied that, and then I went to this school, and then I started in this position in this company. So many people tell their story in a chronologic way, or as an executive, we were taught to use our achievements, right? Our results. So you, as a CEO, I've always
Yep.
interviewed talking about my results,
Your
what I
numbers.
have,
Yeah.
the numbers, right? I grew 80% in 2 years in Ecuador, and that were the numbers I had on the top of my tongue.
Yep.
As a board member, it's much more about your competences, the competences you build, and what how it will reflect
Yeah.
in the position you are being interviewed for, right? So in my case, I always reinforce the strategic vision that I'm able to see, get a situation, do a diagnosis, the design 2 or 3 alternatives for strategic alternatives for growth, plan it, and have the ability of the strategic vision aligned with the knowledge of execution as a CEO, right? So these are the competences that I have always highlighted. The third and the most important is networking, 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 and networking, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, if you are all this story, you have to tell them to someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I usually advise people to focus on, of course, headhunters, but they have 10 to 20% of the board
Yep.
positions. But okay, it's a narrow number of people, so it's easy to access. The second group that I advise is hub persons. These people that are quietly connect with the rest, and then
Yeah.
can
Real connectors. Yeah.
connectors, right? I call them hub persons because they
Yep.
are usually the ones who influence, who makes the decision, or who tells others who can help them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, the third group is associations. So, like here in Brazil, we have the Corporate Governance Association, the WCD, Women Corporate Directors. So there are several associations in which you start blending with people with similar interests and positions than you. So with all of that, it's very important to connect and connect and connect.
Yep. Yep.
And the fourth tip that I will give is regarding build your reputation. So you have to be very generous in give, in provide, in be present, in being a speech, in webinars like this, right? You have to be in mentorship. You have to be very generous in order to start building your reputation. And LinkedIn is a way to show your reputation. I don't think it's the best way to build it, right? So you have to learn all this, how to put yourself in the window for the others to see.
Yeah. No, that's four phenomenal tips, Rossana. I think, like you said, the network, it's like location, location, location. I mean, it's network, network, networking, and it really is getting your story onto as many of the relevant ears, if they're ultimate decision makers in the boardroom or just influencers in the boardroom. That's that group you need to kind of start telling your story to. And then, like you said, it's all about impact, and it's all about helping those CEOs. And we see now more and more kind of the cadence in the boardroom. It's less about board roles for life. It's more about board roles for impact. What can you do? What can you impact? And that goes back to exactly how you describe the board bio approach, different versus kind of the CV or the resume. That it's all about achievement. It's all about competence. It's all about impact. So you phrase it absolutely beautifully. And maybe kind of two final questions, Rossana. What kind of challenges do you see, like, in the boardrooms that you're serving on at the moment? And then a little bit then at the end on, leaning in now as you continue to build out, phase 3 of the career. What are the other types of boards and opportunities that would be interesting for you?
Okay, so regarding the board challenges that I face today, I think that the most challenging is not to focus on a single aspects of the topics you have to deal in a board, right? So there are some boards that are focused on the financial control and compliance, others in strategic avenues for growth, others in people. But actually, I think that what we have to do as a board member is to have an holistic and complete view and discussion of the several aspects that a board member should cover. Started, of course, with for me is growth. We are here to growth, to build a sustainable and profitable growth. So this is the first topic that I think should be in any board. And of course, when you talk about growth, you have the organic and the inorganic, right? With diversification, M&A, joint ventures, etc. And the speed in which you go in one direction or other would depend actually on the speed of the sector, the speed of change of the
Yep.
sector, and the company intention to innovate, because sometimes the sector is booming, but
Yep.
the company wants to be a follower, not
Yep.
a leader.
Yep.
So you have to be very respectful on these two aspects. So that's the first. The second is, of course, investments versus capital, how much you have to invest and what are the source of capital.
Yep.
So for that, you have to understand clearly the opportunities in your P&L, in your balance sheet, and be able to especially in family-owned companies, in order to teach them and orient in how to structure their investments and funding alternatives, right? And tied with that, you have risks, right? So doing a whole holistic risk matrix is very important, and I find that very difficult to discuss in boards. Actually,
Yep.
very few boards have that very well formalized, because you don't know the risk until it happens, right? I was board member of a public company of $8 billion, and we were almost in a bad. We were almost risking uh, Chapter 11
Wow.
because of one issue, one action, legal issue that we had,
Yeah,
right?
exposed. Yeah.
And that came out of blue. No one was expecting that. Of course, then you have technology, which how to boost the opportunities that technology can provide you in terms of cost reduction, growth, or competitiveness. And another topic that I find very difficult to discuss is ESG.
Yeah.
I'm in a board in Uruguay. I represent IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, and actually, the IDB has an agenda for ESG, and so economic, environment, social, and governance. So there is easy to apply because they have an agenda with IDB.
Yep.
In other boards, it's difficult to bring ESG as part of the business model, not as a philanthropy, but
Yep.
as an opportunity for growth and an engine for diversification, right? And finally, for me, the final and most important one is people, because you cannot viabilize any of the previous one if you don't invest in building a culture and a structure and the competences that you need to put all this in place.
That's amazing. That's phenomenal. That's great, Rossana. Thank you so much for sharing those points. And then finally, for you, what kind of roles are interesting for you as you continue to build out your portfolio?
Well, I'm very interested in family business because I see the opportunity that you have to give a huge impact quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm also interested in listed companies
Mhm.
because then you have a broader and more structured and formalized process also to contribute. And international boards. I'm already in a board in Uruguay and another board for Latin America. I've lived in 8 countries. I speak 5 languages. I've lived in Europe, in the US, and in 5 countries in Latin America. So, building on this international
Yeah.
experience and leveraging on my international experience is something that I'm quite interested about.
That's incredible. Rossana, you've been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing today. Muito obrigado. And it's been a real, real pleasure. Um, Hopefully we'll get to meet sometime soon. But have a
I
really
hope
happy
so.
holidays. And thanks so much for sharing all your unique insight.
Thank you very much and hope to see
Pleasure.
you soon. Bye
Thanks,
bye.
Rosanna.